This morning, I just want to focus on Ecclesiastes 3 verse 3b, where it says, a time to tear down and a time to build. But we're going to look at Nehemiah. Everybody know who Nehemiah was? Okay, Old Testament. Okay, so we're going to have a look. Not at all 13 chapters, luckily. We're just going to look at some. So it's just really, I've entitled my talk, Lessons from Nehemiah. I love to walk most mornings. Around our neighboring suburb, I've been noticing that more and more houses are knocking out windows, knocking out doors, taking off roofs. I don't know if anybody else's suburbs are doing that. People are renovating. They've worked out if you've got a house, stay in it, renovate it, and make it exactly what you want. And that's actually reminded me, Neil and I, 10 years ago in our house, we were looking to move because we had a house that was closed in. It had little windows, it had dark rooms, like a little dark kitchen. And so we looked around at moving somewhere. It's very expensive to move. And also we couldn't find what we wanted, where we wanted. And we realized that our home was actually perfect where it was. It just needed a little bit of a facelift. So we spent a lot of time planning. We decided what we would do. We had to think about the changes we wanted to make. We had to draw up plans. And we had to work out the costs, which we underestimated, but that's what happens. Project creep, you know the story. Once we'd started, we were dependent on builders and workmen to do the work. Although I was like the gopher. I had a little golf. My back seats used to go down, and I used to race all over town, getting tiles and bathroom fittings. And I see Tracy's nodding. She knows the story. So my little golf was like a little bucky. It took a lot of energy. It took a lot of time. Things didn't go right all the time. Trouble with this and trouble with that. But eventually, our home that we already had was the home exactly as we wanted it. And we have now stayed there another 10 years. And this made me think of Nehemiah, one of those that God tasked with the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the home before the exile to the Jewish people, but it had broken walls, no gates, a lot of rubble, when the Israelites when the Jewish people were overtaken and taken into exile. So if we just look at some context, Ezra and Nehemiah were contemporaries. So there's a book of Ezra and there's a book of Nehemiah. And they both wrote about the rebuilding of Jerusalem. That occurred about 70 years after the city was first attacked by the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar. Ezra wrote about the rebuilding of the temple, while Nehemiah wrote concerning the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls. From ancient times, cities located in the Middle East, they had walls around them, stone walls and gates that were therefore guarding the citizens of the city. But they were more than that. The important men, I'm sure women too, if they were allowed, of each city would gather at the gates, and they would conduct their business, and they would share important information, or they would just sit there and pass the time. Nehemiah was from the tribe of Judah, an exile during the time of Persia. He lived during the 5th century BC, during the reign of King Artaxerxes, the first of Persia. And although he was a Jew, he grew up in the Persian Empire. So as I was reading through Nehemiah about the rebuilding of the wall, which this had come to me while I was walking around our suburb, looking at all this rebuilding, and I just had this thing, read Nehemiah, read Nehemiah, read Nehemiah. And so the following thoughts were ones that I took. So if we can read from Nehemiah 1, some of it we're going to read, some of it we're not. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hananiah, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, "Those who survived the exile are back in the province and are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. For some days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly towards you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you amongst the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling place for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great strength and your mighty hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the power of this your servant, and the prayers of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servants success today by granting them favor in the presence of this man. And there were 3 lessons that I took from this. The first one was that it's a time to build. So what was the situation? Nehemiah had heard the report from the other Jews who had returned from Jerusalem. The walls of the holy city were in ruins. They were still in ruins. Nothing had been done. The people were experiencing grief. And Nehemiah's heart broke for that, and he felt sad. We read in verse 3, the wall is broken down and its gates have been burned with fire. So if we were to look at our own lives, where are you? What is your situation? Do you have broken walls? Maybe not. Not everybody does. But do you have an area in your life that God is saying to you, let's maybe build this? Maybe I need to give up a habit and take up a new habit. Maybe I should be spending my time and energy differently. Am I avoiding into stepping into what God is calling me to? Building new habits, new relationships, new focuses. Big question. Am I really honest about where I find myself right now? And part of this, Nehemiah, his go-to was prayer. So he fasted and he prayed for days, confessing the sins of Judah and begging for God to act. So we read in verse 4, I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Verse 6, I confessed the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. In verse 11, give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. Nehemiah's first impulse when he heard about what was happening was to pray. Am I that faithful? Do I pray straight away? I think if we're serious about stepping into God's will for our lives, if we are serious about asking God what we need to remove or tear down and what we need to step into or build up, then we need to be serious about pressing into God and spending time in prayer. Maybe we do need to confess a sin, but maybe we just need to admit that we are just not walking in the fullness of God's will for us. I even ask the question, do we need to take time to fast and pray so that we can really hear what God is saying to us? It's a practice that maybe we are not taking up enough. Fasting and praying. Challenge to the church. If I read in Psalm 127 verse 1, it says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. It's all about God. If we continue to read in Nehemiah chapter 2, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought before him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. So he was cupbearer to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. So the king asked me, "Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of the heart." I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" And the king said to me, "What is it that you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, "If it pleases the king and your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it." Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, "How long will your journey take, and when will you get back?" It pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. I also said to him, "If it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates, so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah? And may I have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the royal park, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple, for the city walls, and for the residence I will occupy." And because the gracious hand of my God was on me, the king granted my requests. So I went to the governors of Trans-Euphrates and gave them the king's letters. And the king had also sent an army officers and cavalry with me. So we see that Nehemiah had a bold action plan. As a cupbearer with a relationship to the king, he appeared before Artaxerxes one day with grieving expression. Culturally, this was a huge risk, since Persian officials were supposed to stay cheerful in the king's presence. However, the king had mercy on Nehemiah and asked why he was so sad. Nehemiah prayed before he answered him, and he spoke about the condition and what happened. And he also had like a little bit of gumption, because he asked the king for more than just letting him go. He said, "Can you give me a letter so I can get there safely? And then can you give me all the provisions that I need to build the wall?" I mean, like, really? And amazingly, the king did this. So for me, it very much shows that God was looking with favor on what Nehemiah was trying to do. But Nehemiah had that connection with God. So my question to us is, what is stopping us moving forward? Is it that it's too scary? Or is it too costly in time and effort? Have we even thought about what we need to do, what action plan we have? How are we going to get there? It's not just going to happen, and we do have to be bold. We read in Luke 14:28, it says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it?" It's about being prepared. It's about taking time, prayerful time, to count the cost, to see what is needed. But it takes boldness as well. If we just carry on reading in Nehemiah. So Nehemiah went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, he set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one that I was riding on. By night, I went through the valley gate towards the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved towards the fountain gate, where the king's pool was, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through. So I went up to the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had not said nothing to the Jews, or to the priests, or nobles, or officials, or any others who would be doing the work. Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, Let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me, and what the king had said to me. And they replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began the good work. In chapter 3, Elisha, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building it as far as the Tower of 100, where they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zakur, son of the Imri, built next to them. And I'm not going to read the next 30 verses, but the reality is that everybody got involved in building the wall. They each built the section near them. They each got involved, them, their families. It wasn't Nehemiah doing all the work or just a certain amount of people. Everybody got involved and they built. So the second lesson that I learned was that Nehemiah did not build alone. Everybody helped build the gates and the walls exactly where they were. If I look at this in our lives, so Nehemiah, where we read there, he first did a bit of a recce, and he went out, and he didn't tell anybody, but he went out and he looked at the walls, and he saw the gates that were broken, he saw the walls that were down. Then he went to the people and said, okay, this is what we need to do. So we have to start somewhere, and maybe we have to start by doing that recce before we get involved with everybody else. But the big thing that I want to take from this is that we don't have to do it alone. We are not in this alone. That let's ask each other for help. And we also need to help each other. It was a communal effort. The whole of the Jewish people in Jerusalem helped this. So if we read from Ecclesiastes 4:9-12, 2 are better than 1, because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can but defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So the third thing that I take from Nehemiah was that they were faced by attacks from within and without. They had to be prepared for the attacks. And I'm not going to read the next, it's like 3 chapters telling you about the attacks. You can read it on your own. But I'm just going to summarize. Certain enemies resisted the rebuilding of the walls from the very beginning. These included Sanballat, the Horonite, Tobiah the Amorite, and Geshem the Arab. They argued that Jerusalem had a history of rebellion and fierce independence, especially as a monotheistic society, not a line for any other gods. Rebuilding the walls would empower more rebellion. This is what they said. The enemies mocked the Jews and accused Nehemiah of fostering rebellion against Artaxerxes. We can read that in Nehemiah 2:19. Trying to discourage and intimidate the Jews into stopping the project. But Nehemiah and the rest of the Jews continued, but the opposition grew more intense. The enemy strategized to plan an attack and create chaos and confusion in Nehemiah 4:8. Nehemiah prayed, there it is again, and he prayed and he set guards with swords to protect the workers, dividing the people into half, so that one group would build while the others would stand guard. Again, they did it together. And in fact, those that were building carried their swords with them as they were building. But all this time, Nehemiah declared God's protection over them. He said in Nehemiah 4:20, our God will fight for us. But not only did they encounter rebellion or attacks from outside, they also found resistance amongst the Jews. A few nobles wouldn't help build the walls, Nehemiah 3 verse 5. A famine had caused economic problems. And as the famine hit, wealthy Jews charged interest and took property from the poorer Jews, all against Mosaic law, which is law in Exodus. But Nehemiah stood against the injustice of the people and praised God for the end of oppression. Later, enemies tried to get Nehemiah to leave the city, hoping to ambush him. They kept inviting him to come to a meeting, but he never went. When Nehemiah didn't leave and stayed, they falsely accused him of rebellion and even tried to hire false prophets to intimidate him. But Nehemiah prayed continually and wouldn't be silent, saying, "Should man like me flee?" So we see, if you read the rest of them, there was this constant attack from outside, this constant rebellion from inside, that they had to stand up. So it wasn't just, okay, let's quickly build this wall. It was not easy. So my question is, what's stopping you from building? Something from the outside? Something from within? And as we decide to go forward, I think we have to be constantly looking out for attacks. Not in a negative way, just being alert and being vigilant. In Ephesians 6 verse 12 we read, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm." Satan is very quick to stop us when we are moving in God's will for our lives. I'm sure that many of you have experienced this. It definitely is something that's very scary. So we need to recognize, and if you read Nehemiah, you'll see that his whole life was about prayer. He went to God with everything. He asked God for help and interceding with the project right at the beginning with the king. He went to God in prayer when there was resistance. He inspired the Jews because he was in touch with God. He confronted injustice and stayed on a mission. And they rebuilt the walls in, anybody know? 52 days they rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. That's quite something. Okay, so the question you're all sitting there and thinking now, why are we talking about this? What is this to us? As I mentioned, walking around the neighborhood, and this message from Nehemiah kept coming forward, and I had to say, God, okay, why? What is it that you're wanting me to say? And the message for me that I believe with conviction that I have to say today to all of us, it is time to build. Let us move on. Let us build. So if we look, where is our church today? And something that I know some of you that I've been interacting with for a while, God has been saying to me that we need to build family, and he will provide a shepherd and pastor. It's not about getting a shepherd or pastor to build the family. We have to build. So I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to say things that have been heavy on my heart. There are some of us, and we rejoice for those that have joined our community recently, or maybe not so recently, but that are fairly new here. But maybe you're not feeling quite as connected as you'd like to be. Maybe there's some of us that have been away and are back. I was in Mauritius for 4 years and came back at the end of 24. But maybe we've been away and come back. I know when I came back, there were a whole lot of people that I didn't know that had come and joined while I was away. Maybe for some of us that are here, there is brokenness, which needs healing, rebuilding, and restoration. Maybe there's some of us that are facing difficulties in our own lives, or maybe a loneliness. And then there are also some of us that are strong and connected. But remember, we are all in this together. When I was thinking about this, I thought of the lyrics of the song Hosanna. Break my heart for what breaks yours. And I think that was very much Nehemiah's story. His heart broke for the brokenness in Jerusalem. And I think God's heart is also breaking for where we are in our brokenness. So the season of tearing down is past. The season to build or rebuild is here. It's time to move forward. In these last few months, serving as an elder, and as I've had the opportunity to connect with people I didn't know before, and as I've been involved in the huge project to get our database and members and people attending worship here at Hoperidge up to date, so if you haven't filled in the forms, today is the day, I've realized that we have so much potential to become more of a community and more of a family. As I mentioned earlier, the walls and gates were not nice to have, but rather were there for the protection of the citizens. The gates were also a place of gathering and community. And so just like the walls of Jerusalem needed to be rebuilt, I see that we have to build community and family here. And as we do that, we will be building the walls for us at Hoperidge, the thing connecting us together. It's time for growth and restoration. It wasn't easy for Nehemiah, and no matter how hard it is and how out of our comfort zone it is, we each need to step into rebuilding our Hoperidge Church community, prayerfully and purposefully. If we read in Philippians 2, 1-4, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking for your own interests, but for each of you to the interests of others. Community. We need to spend time in prayer. Each one of us need to examine ourselves and ask, what is it, God, that you want from me? Do I need to have a heart of compassion? Do I need to come alongside people? We each need to seek wisdom and guidance in this rebuilding for ourselves. We need to say, show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me, for you are my God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. So we need to be bold and step up in faith. Nehemiah had to be bold and confront and tell the king why he was sad and what he actually wanted. So before he set out for Jerusalem, he'd already thought about it and worked out what he needed. So what provisions do we need for making this family? What provisions or what cost is it going to take for each of us to be connected? I'll throw this challenge out to you. If you want to be part of the future of Hoperidge, what plans, if anything, do you need to put into action, or steps do you need to take? We all are in this together. Let us take encouragement from Joshua. I love Joshua. After Moses had died, the Lord told Joshua to get the people ready and to move into the promised land. 3 times in Joshua 1, God said to him, be strong and courageous. The one he even said, be very courageous. The last time, Joshua 1 verse 9, it says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So if you remember, the second point is Nehemiah did not build alone. And I'm saying we do not need to build alone. So as each of the different areas in Jerusalem built their wall, I think each one of us can help build this wall. Whether you've been here for many years, and I first joined this church, it was Ridgeway at the time, in 2011. And then, of course, I went away and came back. There's been a lot of change over that time. So some of you have been here for a long time. Some of you are fairly new. Some of you, like me, went away and came back for various reasons. But we all have a role to play. Building community doesn't just happen. It takes effort and involvement. And so I'm going to challenge each one of us, myself included, to take the next step, or the next 2 steps, or the next 3 steps. How many of you only connect with the people that you know when you come to church? How many of you come and sit in church and then rush off afterwards? You're not going to get to know anybody if you do that. Sorry, I'm going to be a bit bold and say things as I see them. How do we get to be family if we don't talk to each other? If we don't get to know each other? If I don't know where you're hurting, how can I help you? How can I pray for you? If I don't know how I can support you, how am I going to support you? If I don't know that you know that there's somebody sick at home, how can we care for that person? I think we need to all take time to become real family and real friends. So my challenge, the first step today, after church, introduce yourself to somebody you don't know. Can you do that? Just go up, talk to them, come and have coffee, talk to them. Find out who they are, what their name is. Maybe find out something about them that you can pray for this week. And next week, come back and talk to them again. I think if we do that, we're soon going to get to know each other. So I invite you to come to church afterwards for coffee. It doesn't have to be a long coffee, but just come and talk to somebody you don't know, introduce yourself. If we make a meaningful connection each week, if we get to know each other better than a simple nod and smile, if we take time to really connect with people, we will build community. We will build family. We will then be able to encourage each other, be able to journey with each other. We'll be able to have fun together and may be able to cry together. And definitely we'll know how to pray for each other. That was the first challenge. The second challenge, I think Peter took some of my thunder, is about the volunteering. How about volunteering? Wouldn't it be great next year if the whole church was at the Volunteers Appreciation Breakfast? I mean, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? But there's no better way of getting to know people than working alongside them. If you're serving on the hosting committee, on the welcoming and hosting, the welcome team, you'll get to know those people that you're welcoming with. The only qualification for that, serving on the welcome committee, is a smile and a friendly hello. You don't need any other qualification. No doctrinal stuff, no theology stuff, a smile, and I'm sure we can all do that. The hospitality team, this is if the person that you don't want to really talk to anyone, you just want to do something in the background. The hospitality team, they clean up the tea and coffee cups afterwards. So that's something we can all do. There's volunteering catering. Our worship team get here before 7 in the morning. So just each week there's somebody who brings them something to eat between their practice and the service. That's easy enough to do. Maybe getting involved in kids' church so that the folk that are there every week have a chance to come to church. Why should they miss out every week on the service because nobody volunteers for kids' church? The same with the youth. Joining the worship team. I know we've got a wonderful worship team, but they would welcome anyone else because it also means that they can have a Sunday off. Joining the AV team, and it's wonderful to see a new member of the AV team today. Even if it just means doing the lights, switching the lights on and off, or pressing the button on the camera, or doing the slides from the top there. Or if you want to even get more involved, learn about the sound system. There are various ways that we can get involved in church. So that was my second challenge. First, say hello to somebody you know. Second, get involved so you can come to the breakfast next year. And just on that, a quick appeal. If there's somebody here who knows QuickBooks or is an accountant, we need looking for somebody like that. So if you are, please come and see me afterwards. There's always a place that you can get involved. But then my third challenge to you is to get to know a smaller group. It's in the small home groups or the small groups, the ministry groups, that we really get to do church, that we really get to know each other. So there's the men's ministry for the men. They have breakfast every second week. And then once a quarter, I think they do an event together. There's the ladies' ministry, She Walks with God. So every second month, we do an event here. And in between months, we're going to start a devotional. We have prayer meetings here on advertised Sunday mornings. Or we have prayer before the church at 9 o'clock in the courtyard. Or join a home group. And many of you on your question-answer membership thing have said you want to join a home group. So we're looking for leaders so that we can start new home groups. Or if there are a couple of you that are friends, let us help you start a home group. Those that are in home groups know that that's where real church happens, caring. So if we read in 1 Corinthians 12 to 14, it says, just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we are all baptized by one Spirit, so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we'll all be given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the one body is not made up of one part, but of many. And then we need to be alert and vigilant. The enemy is going to attack, has attacked, and he's going to attack in the future. He doesn't want us to build a strong community or a strong family. Some of the attacks will be from outside. He will also try and cause division and apathy from within. So we really need to press into God. We need to persevere in prayer, and we need to stand together. The Bible warns us and encourages vigilance against spiritual opposition, describing the enemy as a prowling lion and noting the battle is not against flesh and blood. In Peter we read, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. The Bible also advises to put on the full armor of God to protect ourselves, trusting that enemies will stumble, and encourage us to find refuge in God. In Ephesians we read, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. In Psalm 91, verse 4, it says, he will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge to his faithfulness. He will be your shield and rampart. God wants us to come to him for protection. And the Bible also highlights that submitting to God and resisting the devil causes him to flee, promising eventual victory over the enemy. In James 4 verse 7 it says, submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And so, I believe that it's time to build. It's something that God has been saying, and as I mentioned before, we need to build a family. If you read, and I mentioned at the beginning that Ezra and Nehemiah did the rebuilding together. Ezra came and rebuilt the temple. Nehemiah was involved in building the walls. Let's not worry about the shepherd. Well, yeah, let's worry about the shepherd, but let's worry about rebuilding, becoming family, becoming community. A shepherd is not going to do that for us. We have to do that for ourselves. We are church, we are community, we are family. That's just what I felt. God was saying, tell the people today, it's time to build family.